Kia ora koutou katoa. I'll try to speak loudly, but do tell me if I need to speak up. I te tuatahi mihi ana ki a koe moana mō tō karanga, yeah. Mō tō mahi, tēnei ruma, the New Zealand room, ka huri ki Te Puawānanga, ka nui tira. Pai, yeah. Kia koutou katoa, ngā mihi i te whānau. Hey, lots of familiar faces, and today we're all going to be wahine. Ngā wahine katoa, yeah. And I guess that's a entry to the topic, the theme of this series of talks. Mana wahine, as an opportunity to bring some discussion in this time of puanga, matariki, which means a lot of different things to lots of different people. But then, and so I was like, yep, matariki puanga, yeah, cool, I can totally do a kōrero about that. But the thing that threw me off was the mana wahine part. And I really had to take on that challenge and spend some time to figure out how to share something in that context. So I've prepared a presentation. There's slides on the screen, not too many words, which is also rare for me because I usually have lots of words on the screen in a presentation. But yeah, just a contribution really to our kāinga nui o Whangārei. Yeah, mihi ana kia koutou. So e te tuatahi, ko waiau, kua hau he uri no konei. Te parawhau, Ngāti hau, Ngāti kahua torongare, Ngāti hine, te wairiki, te uriroroi. Yeah, ka nui tira ngā hapū o tēnei rohe. And yeah, we got connects to all of them as the whānau that I come from. Wakefield being the last name. That's not an Indigenous name from here. And my understanding is Wakefield comes from a convict sent to Tasmania for stealing a loaf of bread or something like that. And I would love to learn more about that side, but also was hugely relieved to know that we are not descendants of the New Zealand company founders, Edward Gibbon, Wakefield, and all of those kai tāhai of tēnei whenua. Oh, they got up to some stuff. Yeah, and then of course we have our wider whakapapa. Our Wakefield side also takes us to Fraser, to whānau Nicki, no Kāti Mamoi, on the far end, Raki all the way down to Waipainamu Ngai Tahu. And that's a really cool journey. I'm a total tourist every time I go down there and absolutely enjoy getting to know that end of Aotearoa because it's so different down here, down there than up here. And then we are te whakatohia through our kaini mā hohi Wipaki. She came north, married into the whānau kake, and we are all descendants in our Wakefield branch, and there's kake of us as well. There's quite a few last names, but Pihiauri is the marae. And we're from here, yeah. And there's quite a few of us. That last name kake might sound familiar. But yeah, before I actually get into the kōrero, I wanted to pānui a few things. Because for those who are good for multitasking and can hold a pen and really think about things, I would love to be inspiration for your submission to the Select Committee on the Regulatory Standards Bill. This little bit of cardboard over there on the table was put out, across the motu. There's hundreds out there, thousands. From the Green Party, but they're offering to consolidate, to collate. Yes, and there's more. Yes, and feel free to pass out. Yes, let's pānui, unsolicited, but you're here for this, right? Yeah. That's why we're here in this conversation in kōrero. But yeah, it's a just, feel free to grab a pen, write your reasons. It's a handwritten version. Some in the room will be doing a big, chunky, technical version of submission to the Regulatory Standards Bill. And if you do both, neither will get struck out. So just, feel free to scribble on here, whatever you feel. And you can either leave it for me to collect up and I'll make sure they get there, or you can post them to Parliament and I'll make sure they get in before the deadline. And I've forgotten the deadline, but you...
23rd.
23rd, yay, ngā mihi. Cool. Awesome. And there's the online submissions process. So the paper there sends you to there on the Parliamentary Services website. And that's, you're going to find your way to enter a submission online there as well. But I'm not going to talk about that because there's too much of that, and I think there's really wonderful thinkers and people publishing many reasons for you to really think about whether that piece of legislation is good for us or not. So I'll move on. The next pānui is, you know, te wā hōtoke, puanga matariki is also wā mauiwi for many of us with mokopuna and kids that are spreading bugs like crazy in their kura. So here's a little pani from Nature's Therapeutics, and this is from a previous kaupapa where we ordered thousands of them, but Nature's Therapeutics are a whānau Māori from Tangatiroria, and they've got whenua Māori there, and they harvest their rongoa from there, and they do their extractions, and so put on the lab coats and take the extracts from the rongoa that's been harvested from the whenua, and it's put into these which are really awesome Pākehī Māori around here, and direct ties to our whenua on our Te Parafo side. So Gordon Little and others, from that whānau are leading out a cool bizzo there. They're down by Westpac if you want to drop in and see what else they got. But feel free to take them. Yeah, take a pani. And it's got like a menthol, you know, it's like your Vicks. Yeah. Okay, so kahuri. Time. 12:22, and we will be finished by 12:45, but I'll look to leave time for pātai, questions, conversation. Ka pai. So, mana wahine. Mana wahine. This was the challenge for me, was to really see how I fit into this, I'm going to say construct, because I think we're always modernising and interpreting these, you know, concepts from Te Ao Māori into the life we live today, and you know, there's diversity of thought on these things. Because I struggled so hard to think about a mana wahine type topic, I'm going to draw links between mana i te whenua and the concept of mana wahine. Yeah. And there's lots of ways to do that. I'm quite sciencey, so it's going to be a bit of a science whenua type thinking line of thought. But ultimately, I really wanted to share with the room today a bit about the journey as a hapū kaimahi to the restoration of mana i te whenua here in Whangārei. So where to start? Mana, okay. Mana i te whenua, what do we mean by this? And it's right up there in that first, Kawinata Tapu, 1835, he whakapūtanga o ngā rangatiratanga o New Tirene. The Declaration of Independence, and for some of us, the constitutional foundations really of where we are today. He whakapūtanga 1835 has this phrase in it, mana i te whenua. I'm going to kind of come to that, but maybe just to break down the kupu. Mana, a concept I'm sure many of us will kind of be familiar with. Some will call it, you know, power, authority, prestige. It's the foundational part of the concept of manaki, the care and the generosity and the thought for others. Whenua means a lot as well, not just the land. Whenua is a very mana wahine topic when we're talking about the placenta, the afterbirth. That's the whenua. But what I have also learnt here in Whangārei, whenua is also the kupu our tribes have used over generations to describe anything that is of the flesh. And it was especially relevant in the mahi for us to learn and protect the cultural values, the taonga tuku iho of onoke, which is there in the photo. So a diverse thing, you can't translate these things. But it's this bit in the middle that actually I want to really focus on, the ite. Mana ite whenua is a concept, or I suppose I'm looking to 1835 when it was written in he whakaputanga. Mana ite whenua is not a possessive statement. Mana ite whenua is talking about, in he whakaputanga, is talking about the authority, the power, the sovereignty, some may say, that is derived from the whenua. So you don't have mana without the whenua, is another way to put it. Mana ite whenua, it's not a person. Mana ite whenua is an action. It's giving expression to things. How to put it? The concept of mana ite whenua is it's not a claim, it's not an individual, nor is it actually a person. It's about the rights, the duties, and the responsibilities of that are derived from the whenua. So I'm just going to explore that a little bit, and kind of how it came relevant in my life, kind of later on in my life. That's the script of he whakaputanga. There's many beautiful kupu in there, and I'll just kind of focus on a few others. He whenua rangatira. This is also not a possessive statement. It's talking about the unique attributes of the whenua, the things that enable us all to thrive and survive, the ancestral, spiritual and economic significance of the land, he whenua rangatira. And it's in he whakaputanga as well. The tupuna have written, ko mātou ko ngā tino rangatira. And, that's the kind of only mention really, or there's a number of them, but it's a mention of how the rangatira who gathered together and signed he whakaputanga, crafted and signed he whakaputanga. It was a statement that the mana is derived from the land resided within them. Anake, so anake is like only. It was a statement of these things. These are our constitutional foundations of New Zealand, and they were quickly diminished and, put under duress. But what I was hoping to explore today is to figure out whether these things are still relevant, these concepts are still part of us, either deliberately or, through social norms or through our culture and through our tikanga isn't even the right word, it's just what we do, the things that we do, the way we live our lives. Here in Whangārei, are these concepts still there? The recognition of he whenua rangatira, the recognition of tino rangatira, that the mana is derived from the land is best expressed through those who are descendants of these signatories and the tribes of he whakaputanga through to Te Tiriti and beyond. I was just kind of keen to check in on that. There were 52 signatories to he whakaputanga by 1839. And I see it as an insight into a written, and unwritten constitutional framework that they lived in, the tupuna of that time, where land was not a possession, rather they were giving expression to the mana that was derived from the whenua. And that the best way to do that is to do it together. to maintain peace together with other rangatira gathered in assembly. That was kind of one of the concepts of he whakaputanga I really wanted to lean into today and give us a little test run on how we're going on that here in Whangārei today. So it's a bit of a study. 190 years later, are these things still in our lives here? Okay, but I'm going to skip a lot. There's the English, sorry, I'm going to skip that too. I'm going to skip a lot of kind of what's happened in the last 190 years. But as a visual image was just trying to give mention to the many significant impacts on what he whakaputanga was expressing. Deliberate introduction of disease, invasions, many invasions you could say over time, you know, gigantic imperial forces landing on these shores and really giving really our tupuna the run, you know, the being put to task. The missionaries, the acts of the missionaries, assimilation, confiscation, assimilation not only of the you know, the people, but also the whenua, you know, the species that were introduced, the motherland kind of intent of those who were settling and converting the land, which didn't see value in our indigenous biodiversity. Forcing rational thought upon our culture and heritage, you know, bringing a hierarchy of scientific Western ideals and thoughts into our world and thus diminishing and also criminalising tohunga, karakia, te reo Māori, all of these things. It's pretty brutal the last 190 years. Hard out. Again, I don't think I need to go into that too much because of the room we have today. So I'm going to fast forward again to 1983 in Portland, on the southern shores of Whangārei te Tiringa Parawa. Cement works, limestone country, maunga tikorangi's been kind of chopped in half to be shared with the world. This is what I was told by the cement works on my last guided tour there, is that we're so generous, we've shared our maunga with the world. Yeah. Portland, yeah. Portland is, you know, and still is today, a Māori village. It's a kāinga Māori. It's an interesting part of our urbanisation of Taitokiro, you know, our flight to the cities and leaving our lands as the Māori of Taitokiro. Portland's an interesting little kind of case study of that. And man, like, I can go anywhere in Taitokiro and say, hey, I'm from Portland, and they'll be like, oh, you know so-and-so, oh, you know so-and-so, in whānau Māori or schools, all of that, because, you know, a lot of our whānau left their homes, you know, a generation or two ago, and they came here and they worked in the cement works for their whole lives. Yeah. So it was like quite a big village in that way, which I think is quite cool. It was a cool upbringing. Born into a young family, but we didn't do the marae, you know, just a little bit. Tangi, if it was in our immediate family, you know, immediate to my parents. Te reo Māori, kahore. There was none of that in my home, very little, let's say. Ancestral lands, this is a funny one. Growing up in Portland, I didn't even know it was Te Parafo. This is a common experience for people who grew up in Portland who also have whakapapa to these lands. The maunga, I've already told you that story. In my time at Portland Primary is when they first introduced te reo Māori into the curriculum of New Zealand, into primary schools. You know, it wasn't compulsory up until the kind of early 90s. And we were learning our tahirua torus. And it was a real big deal. And you'd get shamed if you didn't pronounce it properly. And, I think we definitely did kapahaka. Sorry, I'll correct that. That was hugely, exciting part of our kura at Portland. And of course it was a kāinga Māori. But it's funny because I don't identify, right through. It wasn't until later in life I actually realised that. It was just normal. But it was still pretty suppressed how Māori we were, I suppose, in Portland growing up. But there were a few clues, that's for sure, that we lived in a kāinga Māori. And like in our family, we lived off that haba. Whangārei Te Parawa was not just, our kai basket. It fed our family. It was, when Māori fisheries was booming, 80s through to 90s. There was a whole lot of stuff going on in Māori fisheries. And our dad, Alex Wakefield, was a big part of that, and very proud because he knew how to fish. He was taught how to fish and to catch everything he needed with nets in this harbour. And then he was shipping it out to Japan and places like that. Yep. So we spent oodles of time on the water. We knew the harbour. We knew what it was to go to a working camp, camping isn't like a relaxing thing in like Te Māori. It's not where you go to like relax and take in the sun and all of that. It's a working thing. I mean, I do that version of camping now, like the very like comfortable, relaxing camping with my kids now. But when we were kids, and definitely in the generations before, to go on a camp was you would be working. You were working so hard to, get as much kai as you can really, and store it and keep it for the seasons ahead, but also to distribute it to your kāinga, to your people. Hanging out on the seashores was not something you did for rest and relaxation. It was a mahi. And our family's done that for generations. Other clues, Nan, she had high hopes for her mokopuna. That would be rich. She wanted us to get educated, to succeed in Te Pākehā. The New Zealand that she experienced. She really wanted us to succeed, and so she never missed occasions like this, graduations, that kind of thing. So going on, then what? Okay, so grow up in Portland, get to know fishing, all of those things. Live in a village full of other kazi, everyone called each other kazis, and go through, but always had that kind of inquisitiveness about science. Got the science degree at Waikato, and then came home. I started a master's in genetics, ecological genetics, and it was about half a year into that I realised that if I do ecological genetics, I could never move home. I'd be stuck in a uni town for the rest of my life. And so made the choice to come home, but quickly found another way to follow my interests, and that was doing education, restoration projects, thousands and thousands of plants up in the upper Waitawa catchment. Like snorkeling, there was so much time in the water, taking kids on things. This wasn't like my doing exclusively. I was lucky to get a job doing this stuff. And I did it for 8 years, environmental education, all over Taitokerau, and learnt a lot about project management, funding applications, the New Zealand curriculum, RAMS, health and safety, adventure activities regulations, all of that stuff, like how to keep people safe. But it was really kind of, it wasn't a new thought after 8 years of doing that mahi, but it was kind of clear all along that I was really clueless about whose land, whose waters, whose taonga I was teaching all these kids about. And I think especially up the far north, I was just this really naive, excited, positive, young Māori girl from Portland that got a science degree, Yeah, and I was encouraged all over the north to to spend time with the kids, to take people snorkeling, to tell them all about their taonga, that as if I know more about it than them. You know, people were so diplomatic to me. They were very kind. And that's that humility, I think, of our whānau all over the north. But a lot of this work took me into kāinga Māori, working with inanga, working with their kai species, you know, and encouraging action. But it wasn't feeling right anymore because I didn't know enough about where I was from, I suppose. But also, you know, I was there getting paid. I was breezing into communities, hyping it up, taking photos of kids doing positive stuff for tangaroa, and then going off and doing another funding application to do that somewhere else. There was kind of no follow through or no obligation to follow through. And yeah, it just started feeling less and less comfortable for me. So yeah, I took a job in the treaty claims, and that's where the real mahi began. Oh, sorry, there's committees too. The uncles, this is the encouragement of the aunties and uncles, parents, they put me on all these committees, whenua Māori, you know. I wasn't just the secretary, you know, because back to the mana i te whenua thing, is like, you know, the concept of mana i te whenua, I didn't know what that meant at that time. On the Committee of Management for Rewa Rewa D Māori Incorporation, our whānau trust, all of these things. I don't know really what that means, but my ethic was to listen and to pay attention. And if I was going to go and do something separate from what I was being directed to do in these large vocal hui, it was at my own peril, yeah. And I wanted to stick around. I wasn't going to disappear. It was hard. I definitely sat there crying in a corner in a few hui. I got the shock of my life when we had like the forest on Rewa Rewa D. The insurance meant that we couldn't go camping on our whenua. And the Committee of Management had to be the voice of that fact. And man, we got slayed by the aunties. And it was just like a really traumatic hui. And one of the uncles said to me, and I was quite young at the time, he said, you know, I might see you next year, you know, at the next AGM. Like I think he expected me to just run for the hills and never come back, because I was really distressed about it. I think it's the naivety though, like I was really like, I'm doing something positive, why aren't they happy? You know, and got shocked. And the uncle said, you know, you're not made of the right stuff, or that kind of tone. And then the next year I was there at the AGM, still on the committee. He was like, oh, hey, you're back again. And then the next year he's like talking to me more. Yeah, and it kind of, you know, I'm still here doing the mahi. Committee life was cool though, because I think the ethic of listening to the people of the whenua was already there. It wasn't deliberate, but it was definitely an ethic and a key part of that mahi on committees for our whenua Māori. But yeah, it's the treaty claim stuff. That's when I was made conscious of he whakaputanga me te tiriti, and started taking direction from it deliberately in my life. So it's not really that long ago. So I guess I was still a young person. I was a mama. Once I really jumped out of the positive environmental education stuff and into the frying pan of treaty claims. And yeah, and there's just been no looking back. Hui after hui after hui, so many hui. And hui are important, you know, if you're giving expression to mana i te whenua. Hui are also traumatic and scary for some people. But you got to find a way to keep going back. And you know, the whanaungatanga is awesome. You get to meet relations you never knew you had. And then you also realise, I've been calling all these people kazi, but now I know how we're kazi. We've done the whakapapa together. Yeah. It wasn't until this kind of stage of life that I was doing that finally. And it's cool, because now I can teach others that stuff. in our whānau who always knew we were related to everyone, but how, we weren't entirely sure. Yeah, hui, protests, more hui, land occupations, protest marches, participating in the treaty claims is not just telling a judge about the Crown's breaches of te tiriti. It was a huge thing for our hapū of not only whangārei, but right across Taitokirau. Even outside Te Wharetapu o Ngāpuhi, outside of the Tribunal Inquiry District, the evidence that was brought into that inquiry is significant. And I have oodles, Moana, I have oodles of tribunal reports, briefs of evidence. These are on the public record now. And you take them all with a grain of salt, you know. Sometimes our evidence is always completely accurate. And it is designed for the tribunal process. But it's essential reading for anyone here in Whangārei. Essential. But, you know, give yourself a couple of years to work through it, because there's heaps. The reports, our stage 1 report inquired into the meaning and effect of he whakaputanga and te tiriti at the time of signing, and the big statement, you know, finding the tribunal made. Tribunal's an independent commission of inquiry too, but the big finding, which we already knew, our tribes already knew. See, I say we, even though I was kuare to it, but I'm like, nah, it's we always knew. We always knew we did not cede sovereignty to the Crown upon the signing of either of those documents. And that, you know, cession of sovereignty, the legal requirements for that were not met when those documents were signed. There's still a question mark that keeps being fired at us though, on like maybe we ceded it later, after the signing of te tiriti. And I find that quite a hard concept because of all the duress that our tribes were put under by the Crown. So we have our stage 1 report, Ngāpuhi Rangatira did not cede sovereignty, and we have our stage 2 report, which really started breaking down the multiple and consistent and almost never-ending breaches of te tiriti by the Crown. Deliberate, documented breaches of te tiriti. And there we've got part 1 of our stage 2 report now, which takes us up to about 1900. So everything the Crown got up to between 1840 and 1900 is in that 2-volume book. It's got the Northern Wars. It talks about Crown land acquisitions, and how every single one of them were breaches of te tiriti. It talks about even the early days of the harbour boards, the economic development and building up to the wartime period. There's a lot in there in these books, and the findings are really solid. But yeah, haere tonu, what else have we been doing since then? Lots more protests, activations. The reason I'm not focusing on how we won in the Environment Court for Onoke, all of that kind of thing, is that Onoke Pā is a wāhi tapu on Dip Road, Te Kamo. And for generations, recent generations, the hapū of Ngāti Kahu o Torongare have been blocking the development, actively blocking the development of that pā. And it's in my mind, it's not about the law, it's not about the judge, it's not about the RMA, it's not about our lawyers, who were awesome by the way, it's about the people. It only happened because the people came together. They met, they agreed to pursue the kāwanatanga pathway to block the development at Onoke. And believe me, we did consider other pathways as well. And the decision was to give the court process a go. And that's the heart of it, you know? And as a hapū kaimahi, these are my bosses, you know, in the hui. A random person telling me what to do, I'm going to look at them sideways and go, call a hui. Really? Call a hui. Yeah. You want that to happen? You should call the hui. You know, do you want me to call the hui? Because it's in the hui that I take my instruction. And that's kind of the way it's been since going into the claims. Yeah. And before, but it's consistently that now. Yeah. Every mahi that I'll pick up, paid or unpaid, it's through instruction of these types of spaces. And that's just me and my version of giving expression to mana i te whenua. Here's another one, tūhono ākura, education is still a love and a passion. And we did storytelling, we've supported our aunties, our whānau on the marae, to share what they want to share with the communities of Whangārei. There's a website, you can jump on there and watch some videos of our people talking, singing, things like that. You know, is a receptacle like this a good expression of mana i te whenua? Is it helpful for you in the mahi that you do and in the lives and the decisions that you have to make to have a website full of tangata whenua talking about things and singing about things? Is it helpful? Do you take direction from it? Is it something that you will consciously remember if for some reason you need to do something that contradicts something they've said? You know, does it stick in your mind enough? I don't know. These are things that I ask as well. So it's kind of like a watered down version of the hui that they're my bosses, I take instruction from the hui. But, you know, to craft a video, to tell some stories, but also to have clear expression of local priorities, aspirations. Is it enough, you know, to weave into people's lives so that they make decisions that can also give expression to mana i te whenua? Is a pātai I have, yeah. Because I just want to know if I should spend more time doing that kind of stuff. Yeah. Is it helpful? Apparently so. Teachers love it, yeah. I've pretended to be a lawyer, yeah. And you got to learn about the ture kāwana. You got to learn these laws and regulations. Oh boy, and they are helpful, and it's also very time consuming and expensive to make incremental change through these types of pathways. But it's critically important. A lot of the, you know, on that kāwana end of the world we live in here in Whangārei, our local government, down Parliament, those places are directly influenced by us, the things that we do, and the incremental change that we require them to put into laws. Yeah, it's painfully slow, but you kind of can't live without it. So case law, you know, you got the judiciary doing their thing. They can only work within the laws that they're told to operate within. And they're really good at giving expression to those laws, man. They're on our side heaps. It's not just Onoke, there was the Northport one. That was huge. Northport expansion was declined solely on the basis that it would delete our cultural footprint at Paparahi whenua. It was entirely because of that significant impact on cultural values through the RMA. The commissioners said no to the Northport expansion. And so they created the fast track legislation, and now we're going to have to deal with that. But I just really want to encourage, you know, doing mahi in kāwana spaces or in those incremental change spaces is critically important. But there's another spectrum of thought that will say that you're complicit, you're complying, you're, you know, and my also honest opinion is that to give expression to mana i te whenua, we need both ends of that spectrum to do the mahi. Yeah, direct action, non-participation in society, all of those things. You know, you're risking being put in jail if you don't pay your rates. You know, those types of things. Not for whenua Māori anymore, thanks to Nanaia. You'll have your land taken off you if you don't participate in the laws and the ture of today. So that's a form of duress, because if those laws directly contradict what is set out in these documents, you know, we're in a bit of a bind, aren't we? I call it duress, yeah. Tino rangatiratanga under duress, yeah. And so when I pay my taxes, I'm all good with that, because I still want to do the mahi for the incremental change, yeah. And I still want to be able to get a mortgage and build a whare for my kids and things like that, you know. Yeah, there's all those implications if you don't participate, you know. If you just drive around with your kara and your registration, you know, that's one life choice, yeah. And heaps of our whānau make that choice, yeah. And so it makes someone like me, my job, tricky on like when I'm taking instruction in a hui, you know, how do I balance that instruction? Because disengaging from the things that continue to put us under duress and suppress us is a growing voice, yeah, that I feel like we should all worry about, but also work with, not alienate, yeah. Because to achieve a te tiriti-based constitution or a future that is more just or addresses some of those injustices, we got to mahitahi, we got to work together. So on a positive note, the final thing, I don't know actually if this is the end, but here's a positive thing. Whangārei heads, biodiversity hotspot, completely alienated. We are completely alienated from the lands of the Whangārei Heads area, pretty much from, you know, Pātawa over to Pakikaikutu out to, and we're talking about Manaia, we're talking about Te Whara, extremely culturally significant places. So reconnecting to that whenua is pretty important, and that's been the real choice mahi in the last wee while. I get to live vicariously through these guys. I'm not out on the whenua, but I do the payroll and the health and safety and the regulatory compliance so that they can. And that's, you know, that's another way I'm giving expression to mana i te whenua, is, you know, having a company and doing all that stuff. Yeah. And we won an award for the Māori Biz, which is cool. But yeah, we're still under duress. I'm not going to stress that. I'm going to keep kind of saying that too much. Whoa, I went way over time. We are under duress. It's continuing. Our hapū don't meet as often as we did during the treaty claims times. We're really smashed. We've got local government constantly things to respond to, this type of stuff, legislation, submissions. It's really hard to do positive mahi under that condition. You know, you might see me often talking in that chamber over there and trying to school the mayor and the decision makers in there on how they're really got a lot of work to do, even within the ture that they're governed by. This is another ongoing guidance, is a position statement that just reaffirms these things, but this one's in the context of treaty settlement. Good luck in Whangārei for anyone seeking to pursue that treaty settlement pathway, because the Crown's conditions to doing that is full, final and comprehensive. You're not going to get a treaty settlement unless you sign your name to that statement. You accept this settlement as a full, final and comprehensive settlement of all of the Crown's breaches of te tiriti up until 1992. That's what a treaty settlement is. And so when you see Nicki in the news also talking about that, please know that we are trying to protect our kids. We got to hold the handbrake. We got to hold the Māori handbrake on this treaty settlement until the Crown is ready to have a proper conversation about those breaches. So yeah, that's often a topic. But yeah, mana i te whenua, it's not a possessive, it's not a statement of, you know, I have mana because I'm from the whenua, I am mana whenua, all of those things. That's my interpretation of he whakaputanga. that our tūpuna took direct instruction from the whenua, and they did their mahi accordingly. And so I guess my offering is that perhaps the same applies to wahine. Yeah. It's not an individual statement that, you know, you are mana wahine, you are mana wahine. It is, the mana is derived from the concepts of wahine. Yeah. Mihi ana kia koutou. Kia ora.